to go. So Becky, take it away. And Charlotte, you can share your screen as you will or as you need. Becky.
To our third arts program, and I would ask that you keep yourselves muted unless you have a question, just to keep out the ambient noise. Charlotte tells me that she made her first quilt when she was in her 20s and then took a long pause, but restarted when she and Jim bought their camp up in Maine. And she's made too many quilts to be able to count, in the dozens and dozens and dozens. So she's going to tell us, as Julie said, about her craft and specifically about the All Saints tie quilt. So take it away, Charlotte, and your assistant Anne, I believe. And make sure you unmute yourself because you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, yeah, that's good.
All right. So, it's not working.
We've got the slides.
Okay.
Can you click on your presentation? Not on Zoom. Just click on that. It should work.
Wow. Boy, I'm glad Ann is here because I couldn't have figured that out. This is some of my fabric collection, a very small amount. This is a picture of my grandmother's quilt that she made for me when I was about 10. And if you look carefully, you can see these are the knots that she put in it. I make a specific kind of a quilt, and it's this kind of a quilt. And so it's like from my own background rather than doing the quilting. Now, when I made a quilt for the church, the first quilt I ever made was actually raffled at a church bazaar long, long ago. And then I made a couple of others, and then I stopped. Then we bought this camp. This is the house, probably as it looks right now. You see how the door is boarded over? That's because it's all put to sleep for the winter. In the summertime, there's a grill and a picnic table and a fire pit and chairs and stuff, but this is what it looks like now. We bought this house in 2002 because as a direct result of 9/11, there's three things that we did as a result of 9/11. We got cell phones. Jim was actually in the air, when the planes hit the towers. So we were very affected by that. He spent a week in Chicago because he could not get home. So we bought this little house in Maine, and I began to make quilts. And we actually put the down payment put the bid in on the house July 5th of 2002. And I started making quilts immediately. I don't know why, but I did. This is him. I have very few pictures of the quilts at the camp, but I made 2 quilts for every bed, and we had 5 beds. So I made 10 quilts in the space of about 3 months, because we finally bought the house on Labor Day weekend. So this is he with the cat. And this is one of the quilts. We named all the rooms. So this is the snuggery room, and it has the name on the side. This is a quilt that I made for camp, and I started making stories up. So this quilt was made for the berry patch, which is one of my guest rooms. And they're all based on bears and what bears eat and what bears do. And so the berry patch has a lot of bees and fruit, and there's some bears. So anytime you see a quilt of mine, there's some little story. So if you look carefully at the fabrics, you'll see the little story, because the bees are in there and the berries are in there. It's just a silly thing that I do. This is another quilt at camp. If you see the little bears running around it, that's my grandson Noah when he was little. That room is called the Cubs Club, and there's bunk beds. So, and that quilt has little teddy bears, actually a little furry teddy bear face on it. There's two of them. They're the same. This is a quilt, a piece of a quilt. It's a fragment that I found at my mother's house. That my great grandmother started, and it's called a log cabin quilt. And the little red squares in the middle are the home, they're the hearth. So that's the tradition of that. So then I tried making a log cabin quilt of my own. And I'm sorry about this picture, but this is the only picture I have of the log cabin quilt in the room called the lair. And I changed it up a little bit so it has little stars in the center. And this little bump next to the headboard is my granddaughter hiding under it, and that's her friend that's making the funny face. This is a traditional log cabin patchwork quilt that I started, and I'm not sure I have too much of it done, but that I had put that up to take a picture of it. So that's a more traditional one. Then I made this quilt, which I haven't finished yet, that has bears as the center piece. And there's some more little bears, and that's the quilt assembled. There's a little close up. This is my son's house, and a lot of the quilts that I made for my grandchildren. And there's a stack of the quilts that I made for them. So, and I'm just going to go through these. This is a quilt they call the Beast because it's so large. It's made of flannel. I think it's better than a king size quilt. I just got carried away with it. Don't ask why. So this is another one. And I made one for Noah. And this is this is a Beatrix Potter quilt. This is a little duck quilt. And I'm sorry about these pictures. That's the duck quilt with the child sleeping in it or trying to sleep. I have a special affinity for hearts. So I made some heart quilts. These are some of the squares. This is one of my favorite quilts. This is the front and the back. People a lot of times put plain fabrics on the back, but I decided I like to use up what fabric I had left over from the front on the back. So, and this is another heart quilt, and that was a more true depiction of the color. This is my son had to stand on a ladder and take pictures of these, and I don't think the color is very good. This is Noah. Noah loved Tractor Mac. Tractor Mac is an international harvester. We're more of a John Deere family, but apparently Billy Steers was an international harvester guy, and so Tractor Mac. Noah fell in love with Tractor Mac. So I found fabrics of Tractor Mac, and these are some of the samples. I will lay things out to see how they look together. And Tractor Mac, of course, was a tractor, so he was a vegetable farmer. And so a lot of these are vegetables. So see how cute that goat is? I just think these are adorable little pictures. So, and Noah has his name on his quilt. This is his finished quilt. This is the one on the left is, of course, my mock-up. And that's the front of the quilt as finished. These are mandrakes. If you're familiar with Harry Potter, you'll be familiar with these particular characters. I fell in love with Harry Potter. She's my granddaughter. So I made a Harry Potter quilt for her. This is the squares that I've assembled, laid out on a white sheet, a white blanket, just to look at them. There's another shot. So there's a close up. That's the quilt assembled with all of the sashing. That's a picture of the quilt from a distance. This is Noah's version. He also loved Harry Potter. So I made two of these quilts. So his is slightly different. His squares are slightly smaller. This is the cat that, of course, has to be on the quilt all the time. This was a quilt I made for a little relative of mine that lost both of her parents. So, and I put her name on it so she would know I will never see this because she's this girl because she lives out in the Midwest and we're not close. But I thought she really needed something to cuddle in. So I signed this quilt. I don't always sign them. And I also put a little genealogy for her written right on the quilt so she'd know exactly who I was and how I was related to her. This is another quilt that I made for my daughter-in-law's nephew. And his name was Jonah. I think it's funny we have a Jonah and a Noah in the family. I made a Doctor Who quilt for my niece, and she sent me some finished pictures of the finished quilt. So as you can see, I put knots all over them to hold the quilts together. This is a quilt I made for a friend who lives, this is for her retirement house, which is in Maine on the coast. And she loves these subtle colors. So this is a little film I made while I was making this quilt. You can see that the edges are pinned, and it gives you an idea of the colors. And that's the cat helping me to finish the quilt. That's when it was on its frame. I like to add a little signature, and I've adapted the heart as my signature. So I will put on a quilt, I'll add a little heart. This is a variation of the log cabin quilt I made for my sister because she loves Halloween. That is her big holiday. So you can see I used the little pictures that I cut out of a fabric as the center rather than the traditional centers.
Charlotte, how many hours does it take you to make one of these?
Well, these are the ones with the little tiny pieces take a lot longer than
Right.
the ones with the big centers. And I can't possibly tell you how many hours because I just do them. I haven't even thought about it. Just start making them. I can, if the squares are big enough and I'm compulsive enough, I can probably make a quilt in along a 3-day weekend. But it has to be, I couldn't make this quilt in a 3-day weekend. It would take too long. So,
Charlotte, it's
yes.
Annette. Those little ties that you put on the quilt, do they function or is it just because you like little ties?
No, it holds the quilt together.
Really?
So, yes. And I'll show you some of that later.
Yeah.
Okay. This is now we'll go to the tie quilt. This is a close-up of the squares. This is the quilt that I made for my niece out of my late husband's ties. He was a mathematician, so those little sashes that you see are mathematical equations, because why not? So that's the quilt before it was completely assembled. This is when I was deciding what fabrics to use as the backing, and as you can see, he loved books, he loved the library, liked stars, so I chose the things that he liked. The little church motif I thought worked fine for him. This was when I was thinking about what I was going to use as a border, and that's the finished quilt. That's the front. So you can just barely see it around the edge. That that binding is ties. The fabric is printed ties. That's the back. And I wrote the little tie square in the center is actually from my late brother's ties. My husband and my brother died about 9 months apart, maybe a little less even. So I made a ties quilt for my nephew also, who was my brother's son. So he didn't have quite as many ties as my husband. So I had to add a lot more fabric to his. He was the big Myrna Loy fan. So down there on the border are some pictures of Myrna Loy. If you could see this better. He liked whiskey and he liked wine. And so he grew up in the country. So a lot of these things are the additional fabrics are his, are just things that he liked. They represent things he liked. And the striped fabric kind of, we're both children of the 60s. So I thought, yeah, that's kind of 60s in a male sort of way. So, and this is a close up of that. And that's me. Oops, sorry. So I am here. I am showing you how I go about doing the ties. This is me disassembling a tie. And we have this is after I've disassembled it, I press it and I put it on a special machine to cut them. I usually do more than one, but this is a sample. If you'll just bear with me, then I cover it up with this heavy plastic sheet. Now, Gloria Perry gave me this machine and I thank her very much because it makes my life so much easier. This is what it is. We have a moving picture of how it works. So, and that's what it does to the tie. It cuts it all up into strips. And I have pre-cut these squares and I put the ties on diagonally, just randomly. It's completely random. I just pull them out of a box. I pin them up, I stitch them. They look like that when that's covering that square. I turned over, that's what it looks like. I have this handy dandy rotary cutter and this plastic ruler that I use to cut the edges off, and it comes out looking like that. I love that it comes out looking so tidy after it's done. So that's me holding up one of the squares. Then we put the squares together and they become blocks. And then we put the blocks together. I think I skipped right over our movie.
No.
Well, we'll have to go back to the movie. Okay, this is the quilt that I'm working on right now, and it is for my brother-in-law, and he likes fishing. So I'll show you the top. This is the back. It's on my dining room table. So that's layer one. Then I put a blanket down. That's the sandwiched in between. What makes it warm. Then I lay the top on top of the blanket. And I use big safety pins and I pin the whole thing together. And then I realize I've pinned it on sideways. Always happens. I pin it on a little crooked. I have to take all the safety pins out, straighten it out. It's just the way it works. This is my quilt rack that I put the quilt on and tie it. Those are the ties. So I tie all these layers together, the top, the bottom, and the middle. So with this is a crochet thread that's for it's Aunt Lydia's, and you use it to crochet doilies and collars and things like that. And this is me doing the final. So that's how I see the big safety pins. Every knot I put in by hand. I spend a lot of time listening to the television. I very seldom watch it, but I'll listen to it like crazy. Because I'm busy doing this, I can't be looking up all the time.
So Agnes wants to know where you find all these amazing fabrics.
I spend a lot of time. That's why I showed you that collection. People that make quilts just are fabric hoarders. So when I think, oh, my brother-in-law was a fisherman, I decided to do this quilt that has lake fishing as its theme. I just started looking. I looked in every fabric store I could find. I looked online. I got a lot of them online. The problem with buying fabrics online is you don't know the scale. necessarily. And that scale is important with these. You can't have a scale that's too big or it's not going to look right with the theme. But as you can see, I have lures and fish and all that stuff. But I spend a lot of time. Right now, I'm collecting a tie of ceramics. I mean, I'm going to make a quilt for my ceramics professor. So I'm collecting ceramics and as little images. And I haven't gotten there yet. So this is me with the in the living room. Now let me see. It's going to take some. I've got to figure out how to. What do you think?
Okay,
Backspace. Oh, I can backspace. Yeah. I'm going to go back to.
Try space bar when you get to the video. I think that's it.
Oh yeah.
Video.
Okay.
Try space bar.
Is it that one?
No, that's not.
No, this one's not right. Did we lose the video?
I don't know.
All right. We're having technical difficulties here, but
Where did you place it? Do you know?
I thought.
Just go down and find it.
Okay, do you have any questions while I'm diddling around here?
Hey, Charlotte, how big is the, just ask, how big is the tie quilt of Jim's?
What did he say?
How big is the tie quilt?
Oh, I've all of my quilts except for that one that I got carried away with.
What
And
size is it?
I've made a couple. The tie quilt is going to be queen size.
Okay.
Dan has his eyes on it.
Yeah, Charlotte, how much of that is done by hand?
Which part?
The quilt, the whole quilt.
I sew almost all of it by machine, and the hand part is the tying it together.
Oh,
I'm a theater person. I don't do couture. I do, like whatever's expeditious. Let me see if I can get this to go.
all right, thank you.
You can what?
Did you change the movie itself? I can play it.
No, I didn't. Okay, we're gonna
Hey,
try.
Charlotte, it absolutely stunning. It's to me, it's mind-boggling. I need the rubber room somewhere after doing that for a while.
It is the rubber room.
But it's just beautiful. It really is. It's
Start
amazing.
on this.
Movie.
Charlotte, what kind of string do you use for the ties?
I use crochet string.
Are you trying to open the movie?
Yes.
All string. Okay.
Just don't scroll. And then you're going to share the movie.
Okay.
So click on that.
I
Hi,
think
Charlotte.
Scared of it. We're trying to get the movie.
Okay. So you just open it. Where's your movie? Is it down?
I don't know what you mean.
Where do you have the movie? Do you have it just on PowerPoint?
Charlotte.
It's got to be here. I think it's this one.
I think
Yes, it's this one. All right, we found the movie. Now we have to make it go.
Good. So just make it go. Where you got to share the screen.
Okay, where's the share screen? Now
Go
it's
down to Zoom again.
okay, pause. Zoom. Okay.
Share your screen.
Okay, we're back.
So go to share screen and then find your PowerPoint.
This one.
And then share. Go to the right corner, right bottom.
I'm glad you're here, Anne.
Okay, now back it up to the beginning
All right.
of the movie. No. Just stay on that. Don't do that.
Okay. This is the beginning. Okay. I'm sorry, it's not quite as pretty as having it full screen. Okay, so this is me taking she has sped some of this up. So this is in my studio. I actually quilt all over the house. So I'm taking the tie apart and I take out the guts. And then I take out, there's a lining at the bottom and at either end. So I'm taking out the lining. So you see that box? That's all of the cut up ties that I've done. Okay, I press it, then I put it, that's the machine. It goes right through like that. That's me putting that together on the squares. I glue the ends down and then I pin the other pieces on. So that plastic box is full of, then I'm sewing, that plastic box is full of all of the donated ties that I have cut up. I wish I could do this fast. I bought myself a very nice professional steam iron, which makes life lots easier for me. But it's a tank iron. So there I'm cutting the sides off and there I'm finished. There's the assembled.
Hey, Charlotte, I need to take a nap just watching this.
Just watching that. All right, and that's the end. If you have any questions.
So Charlotte, each of these squares is about what, 6 by 6?
They're about 6 by 6.
Okay. So, but this big one then is a foot square.
Yes.
And how big is I don't know my dimensions. How big is a queen size quilt? I mean, dimension wise?
I just make it until it fits on a queen size blanket. Actually a king size blanket because I want some edge.
Yeah.
So I buy a king size blanket and then I make it till it's about the right size. I don't know the dimensions. I have them written down upstairs and I do measure, but so it's a number. I don't remember numbers very well.
Charlotte, how do you recommend people clean quilts?
The silk ties and there's some wool ties, the whole combination in these tie quilts means that you really need to have them professionally cleaned. I pre-wash all of my quilts fabrics before I put them together because I want to be able to wash them. So you would, if I were to give you a quilt that wasn't a tie quilt, you could wash it on a gentle cycle and you could even dry it because I've shrunk everything. You have to be gentle because the knots, I try to make a square knot that doesn't go anywhere, but sometimes they come out. If I were to give you a quilt and some of the knots came out, you could just, if they didn't slide out completely, you could just retie them. Or you could get some of the crochet thread and tie it with, and just use that. Or you could call me up and ask me, help, I need help. But yes, I try to make them washable because you really want to wash a quilt every once in a while. And having them dry cleaned is expensive, so I try to do it the cheap way. But I'm always really gentle with them. So,
but this tie one
needs to be dry cleaned.
Needs to be dry cleaned.
Yes.
Or just displayed where it won't get soiled.
If that's what you really want to do, but they're really intended to be used.
Right.
Just don't drink coffee and wine on them.
Yeah. Especially not wine.
Right. Don't eat in bed. Are there other questions for Charlotte?
Yeah. It's Rosalind. Hello.
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, I want to know if Charlotte is doing classes.
I have never even thought about doing classes.
To teach, yeah. Because I love craft. I love craft, so.
You know, Sarah wanted to learn how to sew. Sarah McBurrow. Maybe a little class thing.
Maybe I have taught sewing, so it's possible.
Yeah.
Maybe post pandemic we can arrange that.
Okay, I'm interested in sewing too. I'm having problem with my machine, so but I do most of my crafts with my hands. So I was supposed to do something, but I moved. So and then I really love your works. They are very unique.
Thank you.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time to do those stuff. So I know how it takes. It takes a long time. So I know how to do some.
I
So-
know a
so-
good sewing machine repair place.
Anne says she knows a good sewing machine repair place if you need to have it repaired.
Okay, I will get her number. I will get her
Okay.
number.
I'm putting
Thank
it in
you.
Okay, she said she put it in the chat, so.
Derek?
Okay, thank you.
Spiritos sewing machine on Admiral Street.
Are they still open?
Oh, yeah,
Wow.
I just talked to Joe last.
Well,
couple weeks
he
ago.
used to be on Atwell's.
I know.
Yeah, they moved.
I remember.
All right. Thank you,
Okay.
Charlotte, for sharing that with
Thank you
us.
so much, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Great, yeah.
Nice work.
Thank you for
Nice work.
listening.
Thank you,
Hey,
Charlotte.
Charlotte, do you
Thank
sell
you,
these?
Charlotte.
I do not.
Get
Oh.
make friends with
You
them.
have to buy a raffle ticket.
You do raffle them sometimes?
I have, I've only raffled the one in the 1970s, and then we're making this one to raffle, so.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
How is your
Could someone,
So if we
could
want to
someone put in
raffle,
an order?
Right, but
I'll think about it.
being a teacher?
It's better if I teach you how to do it yourself, so that then you can make your own.
all right.
Oh,
so
I have a sewing machine to make believe me.
Yeah, Barbara.
I have a sewing machine just to make believe I can sew.
Okay.
Barbara, we can do it together.
I know we've been doing earrings for 5 years now.
But I'm waiting for you.
So, shall I stop sharing?
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
all right,
Thank you, Charlotte.
Bye.
Thank you, Charlotte.
thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, good.
Red dot was this.
Wow, that's